Welcome back to another Monday and another episode of Deck Building with Bahumaut. Today we're going to be looking at tokens and what they can do for us. Now you'll find that there's a lot of token options in green and white colours, so we're going to start off our little adventure there. So we'll begin with white. Now with the latest expansions, we have a few new options as to generation, so our actual creation point of tokens. An example of this is Hanweir Militia Captain. As you can see, 2/2 for 2 mana isn't anything special, but when you can transform him, when there's 4 or more creatures in play, he becomes quite a lot tougher and acts as a generator for more tokens to power himself up. Now this can work in an extremely nasty combination, so both of those in your deck. This can work extremely nastily with Pious Evangel. Shouldn't it be Evangelist? Oh well, I'm not the one naming the cards. So as you can see, whenever any other creature, this includes tokens as well, enters the battlefield under your control, you get an extra life. Now, we don't really have to worry about his transform ability, because we'd rather every time something comes onto the field we gain life, as opposed to whenever our creatures die. So we don't actually want to trigger his transform ability unless we have to. But still, it is very nice to have a continual life source on the field. Okay, now that we've got two nice combinations there for our core, let's have a look and see what else we can find. The always handy, always watching is definitely a nice inclusion to have in this deck, so we'll chuck in both of those. Now for cheap token generation we can use Vessel of Ephemera. As you can see there, it costs 2 to play. Doesn't do anything upon entry, but at any point you can play 3 mana and create 2 1/1 flying white spirit tokens, which is a nice little advantage to have suddenly flyers on the field whenever you want. Plus you can just leave it there waiting until you actually decide to activate it. Another generator of our tokens is Gideon. Because of his second ability there, you can see he can put a 2/2 white knight ally onto the field. You can also use him offensively as well with the top option to make him an indestructible creature when he comes into play. And of course, if you're playing him just to trigger an ability, so his bottom ability there, so for example, if you know he's going to be killed by a flyer or something like that, the turn after he comes into play, you may want to just play him and sacrifice him to power up all your creatures in play. And remember that that doesn't go away. So unlike Nissa's ability, it's a permanent +1/+1 emblem that stays on the field. Whereas Nissa's, on the other hand, only affects those that are in play at that time. Any additional cards or creatures you play will not get that benefit. So it's actually quite a lot more useful than Nissa's ability. The green planeswalker, I should say. Now because we're going to use tokens to generate a lot of small creatures, one card that works particularly well with this deck is Hope Against Hope. And we also have a fair number of humans in the deck as well, so that will also trigger the secondary ability there. But the main thing is, we're going to have a lot of cheap small creatures, so giving a creature +1/+1 for each creature you control is a very effective way of powering up your creatures. Now while it's an enchantment which can be removed with kill spells and the like, we're going to have multiple sources of this kind of effect, so it makes it difficult for them to remove every one of these kind of things that you activate in the course of the game. Now we will have a couple of planeswalkers in this deck, but another benefit of Oath of Gideon is the two 1/1 white core ally creatures that come into play. And since we do have a couple of planeswalkers, I'll also get that additional loyalty counter, which can be quite handy and add some durability. Put both of them in because it doesn't matter if you replace it, the summoning token effect will work regardless. Now we'll jump over to green. Now an interesting addition to this deck for our generators is From Beyond. Now an interesting trick you can use with this is, as you can see, the bottom ability there, 2 mana, sacrifice From Beyond, and what you can do is you can add in one of the powerful 10 mana Eldrazi creatures. So if you get to the end, because From Beyond generates 1/1 creatures that can be sacrificed to give you an additional mana. So once you have enough mana out, you can then sacrifice From Beyond to search your deck for an extremely powerful Eldrazi, and then use the excess mana from the tokens to summon it quickly. Or more quicker than you would be able to with normal mana draw. So it can be quite a nasty 1-2 punch, but the main benefit for us is the fact that it continually generates 1/1 tokens. While we won't be really using them for the mana, in essence, we will be using them just to flesh out our number of creatures to power up our bonus effects. Now another consideration of this deck is making sure that you have enough flying protection, because otherwise you can just get run over by a flying deck and there's nothing much you can do about it. So we're going to put in a few Sea Guardians, because upon death they also generate more tokens as well. So you have a nice flying defender, and if it does die, you've got another token to add to your additional effects. And for another generator, we have Nissa. As you can see, she puts more counters. With her -2 ability, she puts more 1/1 counters on creatures. But the main reason we need her is the +1 ability at the top. She can generate more tokens, and thus, tokens, and as a result, put more creatures on the field for us. And sometimes her -7 ability can be particularly handy when you've had a really tough start to the match, or when you're running low on cards, that kind of thing. And another one of the legendary enchantments, Oath of Nissa. Well, unlike Gideon's Oath, which gives you additional creatures when you play it, this one allows you to look through your deck and pick out a card from the upcoming cards, but the secondary ability there at the bottom is also of use to us, because our planeswalkers require multiple of the same land type, which isn't always easy to obtain, because you might only get one of that particular mana or something like that in your draws. So having the ability to use any mana type to play for planeswalkers can be a nice little benefit. So we'll add both of those in our deck as well. Now we'll have a quick waltz into the multicolor, because there's only really one we want to particularly add, but that one is Veteran Warleader. As you can see, it's particularly useful for us, because the more tokens and creatures we have in play, the more powerful he becomes. Plus, you can trigger his secondary ability there with the tap of allies, which we have a few in the deck, so you should be able to pay for that, to gain First Strike, Vigilance, or Trample, which are all nice effects. So we'll put both of those in our deck, and we'll move on to our enchantments. Now, while we may not have a lot of actual creatures on the field, nearly everything we have either generates tokens, which powers up the number of creatures we do have, or are enchantments, which generate tokens or power up other cards we have. So, since there's a large number of enchantments in this deck, Sigil of the Empty Throne is quite a nice addition, because it also gives us more flying defense, And for every enchantment we play, it gives us a 4/4 flying angel creature. So while expensive, it is very nice for mid to end game combat. Another token generating enchantment is Knightly Valor. And once again, while expensive, it does give your creature vigilance, +2/+2, and generates an additional token, a 2/2 white knight creature with vigilance. So it's a nice little effect. Now, another enchantment that generates more tokens for us is Zendikar's Royal. As you can see, whenever you play a land, it gives you a 2/2 elemental creature token. So we'll chuck another couple of those in there. Once again, it's an enchantment, so it'll trigger any beneficial enchantment effects. So, as you can see, a lot of it is all working together. Now, we have a few creatures in our deck that power up for the number of tokens or number of creatures we have in play, but the problem with that is that we can't get that damage through. So we need an enchantment that gives us trample, and since most of our creatures are human, or most of the actual creature cards we have are human, Equestrian Skill gives us that trample ability, but of course you don't actually have to play it on a human to get the +3/+3 effect. So you would play it based on necessity at the time. But a +3/+3 effect is quite nice even without the trample. But an end game, when you're trying to finish off your opponent, the trample effect on a human that's powered up with the number of creatures you have in play is a nice way to finish things off quickly. So it allows multiple strategic options. Now, another creature we should put in is Blessed Spirits. So as you can see, 3 mana for a 2/2 isn't particularly exciting, but since we have such a large number of enchantments in this deck, whenever we cast an enchantment, our spirits get a +1/+1 counter. And of course, you can also play the enchantments on Blessed Spirits as well to increase their power even more. So as you can see, we're getting near the card total here. So we'll do the lands and see how many cards we have left. A couple of Fertile Thickets. What we might do is, because life is going to be a requirement of this deck, we might put in 3 Blighted Steps and 1 Rogue's Passage for our end game. We'll put in our mixed lands. And to finish things off, we'll fill it out the rest with regular lands. And that gives us our 22 lands. So we're 4 short. We need 4 more cards. So we'll look into artifact and colorless side of things. Because we have several humans in the deck, and because we're going to be generating a large number of tokens, Slayer's Plate could definitely be of interest to us. Now, as I mentioned before, when combined with From Beyond, we could take advantage of Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, or Kozilek, the Great Distortion. But in our case, we might stick with Ulamog, I would think. Now, we just need 1 more card. And since we are going to have a large number of similar creatures or tokens being generated, Stoneforge Masterwork should work well for us. Now, I think I might just remove 1 card from somewhere. Might remove Oath of Nissa. Okay, and that gives us our 60 cards, our lands, and our token resistance deck is complete. So for our breakdown, you can see there that we have a majority in white, so our balance is a little bit skewed towards white, but in this deck I don't think that colours really matter too much. As you can see there, our deck is a little bit slower than similar decks, because you can see there that the majority of the cards are 3 mana or greater, but not overbalanced to the point that we can't do anything until turn 5 or 6. So it's still playable, but not as quick as some other decks. Just keep that in mind. But because of the life cards, the life gain abilities within the deck, it should allow you to compensate for any early damage you take. Okay, and our deck is now complete. Let's have a look at our stat values. And then we'll run it through the testing zone. Okay, as you can see, speed and strength don't look particularly exciting. Our control is next to nothing, but our synergy is quite high. So, despite the star numbers we've got there, the deck is actually quite a bit more effective than it lets on. And the only way I can prove that to you is through testing, so let's move on and see what I mean. Okay, and here we go. Okay, so rather heavy on the forest side of lands, but that's alright because we have Nissa in our opening hand, and hopefully we can get a Plains with Fertile Thicket. So we'll see how we go. And there we go, that's just what we needed, and that'll allow us to play anything we've got in our opening hand. Now, depending on how you want to approach things, we could play Vessel of Ephemera at this point, but we could also delay things and use it to power up our Blessed Spirits next turn, so that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so now the actual real game begins. Okay, so they have a slow blocking artifact. There's nothing really to worry about at this point. Oh, we've got our veteran war leader. So at this point we should start playing our generators. So Nissa can come into play. Since they have no attacking creatures, I'll take advantage of the spawning capabilities to start getting our numbers up. Do a little bit of chip damage since they can't attack with the Scarecrow. As you can see, I've already got Veteran War Leader in my hand, so the more creatures I have out before he comes into play, the better. Okay, so that'll be a... they don't have a forest in play yet, so they don't get that benefit. For the Kurd Chieftain, but he can be quite annoying if you allow him to stay in the long run. Okay, so we're going to be generating more tokens. Can play Veteran War Leader now, as he's powerful enough to stop Kurd Chieftain, and continue our attacks with the 2/2. Now if the Kurd Chieftain does attack and is buffed by a forest next turn, we can use one of our 0/1 tokens just to block him and prevent the damage. Okay, another chieftain. Alrighty, so we can play another Blessed Spirits. but just have to remember to keep triggering more tokens. So it's another Blessed Spirits on the field. Of course, if we had another white mana, I'd be able to play and trigger Vessel of Ephemera, or use Slayer's Plate to my advantage, but at the moment we're just one shy of the mana requirements we need. But as you can see, we could be attacking with the 6/6 if we had another ally on the field that we could trigger to give our 6/6 first strike, for example. And there's our expected forest upgrade for the Kurd chieftains. Another token for us. Now 5 mana, so we may as well play Oath of Gideon to give us allies, and that will also buff our spirits. So we can start our attacks now. So as you can see there, they're trying to dispose of my 9/9 Veteran War Leader, but we can take advantage of the allies we just put onto the field to give him first strike and prevent him from dying. And the 6 damage will get through from our flyers. So already you can see the power of Veteran War Leader's multiply ability, and there are enchantments that can give any of your creatures that effect. The only real counter to a deck like this is an extremely large number of kill spells, or basically a deck that consists purely of flying, because we have an average amount of flying defense, but not excessively so. Of course, if your ground creatures are strong enough, you can basically just blast your way through on ground level. As you can see, once you have your token momentum built up, there's basically the only way that you can be stopped is via removal spells. And when they try that little trick of blocking with a single card, you can say, no, I'd rather deal the damage anyway, and just trample through them. And game over. So while you haven't seen the variety of token effects that are in the deck, you do get a general idea from this of how the deck plays, and how, as long as you can get out a large number of tokens, and since you have so many spawn cards in your deck, that's easily doable. As long as you can get a decent number of tokens in play, basically you're very difficult to stop. And so the idea is spawn, power up, win. And pretty simple, but effective. And of course, you can customize this deck to increase speed, add in more enchantments, different enchantments, things like that. There's plenty of customization options for this deck. Just keep in mind that you need to keep as many token generators within the deck as possible to keep it effective. Okay, I think that's it for this week. So this is Deck Building with Bahumaut.